Hello, all Vaadin fans, boys and girls. This is Ville Ingman from the Vaadin studios from Finland, and today I'm here with the Grandmaster of Vaadin Framework at the moment, Leif Åstrand.
Hello.
Nice to have you here. And today I think we're going to have a really important webinar, so really important stuff where we're able to speak about only the new things, pretty much, the latest arrivals to the Vaadin Framework, right? So what do we have, Leif? What are we going to go through today?
We're going to go through the grid component that we added in Vaadin 7.4.
Yes.
So we're going to look at basically all the basic use cases for how you might want, or all the features you might want to use with grid. Of course, you can't cover everything, but we'll try to get the most important ones.
All right, definitely. So this is the thing that all the Vaadin developers should know about the Vaadin Grid.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this is the right place to be. But before we go to details, Leif, so this is I think the Vaadin Grid was the component that has been waiting for the most in all the components in the Vaadin history. The grid has been waited for a long time, and by many people have been asking us, when is it coming out? Why isn't it coming out already?
Yeah.
So why it didn't come earlier?
Yeah, so there have actually been talks about rewriting the table component for 4 or 5 years maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, but we actually for real started considering it 2 years ago.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And then we were quite optimistic. This shouldn't be too hard, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's just build the best grid component in the world, and it shouldn't be that hard.
Piece of cake,
Yeah, yeah.
piece of cake. We can do it in, maybe not 1 month, but 2, 3,
Yeah.
maybe 4.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Yeah. But then actually it, of course, turned out that there are lots of things to keep track of there. So we just accepted that yes, this will probably take some time, but let's hope it's worthwhile in the end.
Yeah.
And
so I think that's something we realized in pretty soon, that okay, we're actually working on a foundation of a new grid component. So that's basically will be the basis for a long time to introduce new features and keep up with the market, what is actually required.
Yeah, we spent lots of time just finding out a good way of structuring everything so that it should be flexible to be changed while still also having good enough performance on all devices and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
So it's really it's really a foundation to build new stuff upon, because there's still lots of ideas for features that we would like to add, but that we have not yet had time to implement, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's when you look at the Vaadin Grid's API, there's actually quite a lot of kind of new concepts, new terminology, things that are not really, that familiar from the start for a long-term Vaadiner like me, for example. So there was quite a lot of new things. So that's kind of proves that there's been some thinking happening behind the scenes. But anyway, I think now it's time to actually dig into the whole thing and start looking what are these new concepts and how you should use the Vaadin Grid component. So it's all yours,
Yes.
Leif. So let's see what you have for us today.
All right. So I have this really starting from the beginnings here. Just what we got here into this method, we will add more and more features to this grid instance, but now we just have created a new grid and it just looks like this. So there's nothing there yet.
Yeah.
So let's get something there really quickly. We'll add 2 columns and then add 2 rows. So for each row we then add 1 item per column. So if we do this, go back to the browser and refresh, then we have now column 1, column 2 and some data and another row.
Yeah, right. So the basic building blocks to just show some grid type data.
Just to verify that it's actually a grid we have here.
Yeah.
But in practice, most times, not all times, but most times you don't want to do it this way, but instead you would want to use a Vaadin container. So basically a bunch of rows that have predefined properties. So here we're using, I'm creating here my own bean item container with orders because we want to build like an order management system here.
Right.
And then we just set this container implementation as the data source. So what happens then is that here we have like lots of data, and here we now have just like the properties from the bean item container.
Yeah.
And just like in whatever order the bean item container defined them, which in this case it's not the order we would want, but we still have it's still a quite good result we got just from like setting the container and nothing else.
Yeah, but this is just basic Vaadin programming still. So same data binding API.
Yes, it's exactly the same container interface that also, for instance, table uses.
Okay.
So the next thing we want to do, we'll start by changing the order of these columns so that they are like some kind of logical order. Actually, the way we do this, it's just like put all the property IDs in the order we want them to appear.
Yeah.
And then if you leave some property IDs out, they will remain in the end. So if you forget something, it's not the end of the world.
Okay.
So now just with this change, actually I just already refreshed, then we now have like first the ID of the order, then the customer that has made the order, the product name, the amount that is ordered, and so on.
Yeah, okay.
The next thing we could do, because now the captions here come directly from the property names in the data source. So this is actually like order amount camel cased in the data source.
Yeah.
And we might want to show some different names. So we will do just a couple of examples here. Sorry. Like this. So like this order amount is the name of the property. We find the column corresponding to that. And then we set the header caption to just ordered instead, and then similar for a couple of other properties. So now we have a slightly more compact naming here for our columns.
Yeah, so this is the way to do localization as well, right? If you want to do things.
Yes, you can. Yes, that's completely true.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course the data you still need to localize
Of
in
course.
some other way,
Yeah,
but
of course,
but
kind of
the basic representation, yes, this is the way to go. Actually now, just to keep these examples simple, I always do like get column for a property ID. In most cases what you want to do is that you create one variable for each column instance, because you will do many different things with the same column.
Right.
So let's go on with another thing. Quite often you have some stuff, for instance, if your property comes straight from your database, you have some stuff that you don't want to be shown. Maybe not, maybe hide it in some cases, maybe never show it because it's just some technical details that are not needed in the user interface. So then you can also remove columns like this. So now we like removed customer and customization and priority and order time. So now when we refresh, we just have all the other columns basically.
Okay. So what should I do if I have a case where I have to, sometimes I need to show a column and sometimes I don't. So
you want to change it on the fly?
Yeah, based on the need that I have. So what does the remove actually do?
What the remove does is that it removes all information about that column from grid. It's still there in the container, but grid doesn't know anything about it. So there's actually two approaches you can take. One is that you can just do grid.add column and then give it the property ID from the container. Then you get a completely new column instance, so it has forgotten anything you have configured for it. But in that way you can get it back, and then you need to put it in the right place in the order and do all the configuration again.
Okay.
Then another thing you can do, starting with Vaadin 7.5, which we are still working on, we'll get back to that later. That also adds like a way of hiding a column. In that case, all the configuration is remembered, but then all the data is also sent to the client, because the idea is that the user can like put it there, make it visible if they want to see that data. So like if it's sensitive data that some users should not have access to, then that's not the way to go. But if you just want to customize, like basically keep the information overload in check, then you can use
okay.
this hiding that we are adding.
Okay. So basically at the moment, if you just remove a column that basically empties from inside the grid, so it doesn't exist inside the grid anymore.
Yeah, grid doesn't know anything about it.
Okay, so you have to remember that. So if you have some adjustments for the column, those are removed as well.
Yeah.
And maybe this use case I mentioned, probably the hide API from 7.5 might be even better.
It depends on the case.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, okay, good.
But let's go on with the next feature.
Yeah.
What do we have here? Yeah. So column sizes. Now all the columns are just like here in this case when there's room to spare, they are just like all the extra space is added like equal amount to each column, which like in this case, for instance, this ID column is visually doesn't look that good. It's a bit too wide.
Yeah.
And also we might want to have, for instance, this product name column slightly wider because we might have some quite long product names, because grid only sees what's on the like first page full of data, and based on that it sets the columns. It can't know what will come from the database later on.
Okay, right.
But actually we will first put back these columns because we will be needing them. So here we, for instance, set the like maximum width of the ID column to be 70 pixels.
Yeah.
So this means that if there is even less space, or if there's too little space, then it will get even smaller up until the width of the contents.
Okay.
But then if we, even if there's lots of space, it will not be wider than 70 columns, the 70 pixels.
Okay.
And then correspondingly here for both the customer name and the product name, we do the opposite. We set the minimum width so that it will get at least that amount of space, but if there's lots of extra space, then it will be allowed to grow.
Okay.
You can also, if you want, set the exact width so that it never changes. Actually, no, we don't have those changes there because that one is not 200 pixels. Well, let's go on.
Yeah, I think it might be.
The customer and product should be equal width. I must have some silly mistake in my code. But yeah, now we once again have like all the columns back, and now this ID is limited, for instance.
Right.
Next feature we have, this is a new one, and this is something that many users have been asking for.
Yeah, they wanted that for the table component.
Yeah, it just wasn't feasible to do. So we call it frozen columns. So the idea is that some of the columns are kept in view all the time, even when you scroll sideways. So here now I say that like product name column is the last one that is frozen. So all columns to the left of that one will also be frozen.
Right.
So what happens now is that when I scroll to the side, we actually have so that these three columns are always there, and then of course scrolling in the other direction doesn't change.
Yeah.
But this is like for giving context, because then if I look like, oh, which one is this, then it's really good to see, oh, okay, it's that one.
Okay.
Next feature, actually if we look at this data now, it's like, this is not like 3 and then a small fraction on top of that, but this is actually like 3,800.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
In some countries you want to have a dot to separate thousands, and in some countries you want to have a comma.
Yeah.
And then also like this date is now really the like American way of showing dates with first the month name and then the name of the day or number of the day. So what we can do is actually change everything related to grid to use German like standards instead. So now if I refresh this, we see that now we have dot as the thousand separator and comma here instead for the fractions. And then also the time now uses a different format. So now we have like day dot month dot year instead.
Yeah. So it looks more familiar to me at least.
Yeah, because you're almost German.
Almost, yeah.
No, but we actually use the same format in Finland as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, what more? Let's continue customizing the data, or the way the data is shown actually. The next thing we will do is that we will set a renderer for a column.
So this is something new.
This is really new, yeah. So the idea is that for each column you can put a renderer, and what the renderer does is that it gets the data from your database basically, or from the container. And then the renderer gets just like the data of one cell, and then it should choose how that data is actually shown in the browser. So here, for instance, we have a number renderer. It takes any number from the data source, and then you give it just a like standard Java number format. So this is a decimal format. And what this does now is that suddenly we show the order numbers in this kind of way.
Right.
And that's just like one line of code, and this ID format is probably something that you use in 15 different places in your application as well, because you want to show those IDs in the same way everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So is a renderer always returning a text? Can it return something else as well?
It depends on the renderer. So like this number renderer always shows data as text, so it's like it's these 4 characters, but we'll just in a while we will see a renderer that does something completely different.
I'm just keen to see all of it.
Yeah, it's a quite cool feature. So another one, this is again kind of the same thing for this complete percentage, which is like how many of the ordered units have already been reserved for this order. So it's a percentage. So let's actually, once again, a number renderer. Now we use a built-in renderer, like one of the Java standard ones, a percent instance. So now suddenly we have like percentages all the way here.
Okay.
But actually we can do even cooler thing for this column. So instead of showing a number, we will show a visual representation. So now we will show like a progress bar. What's the progress of this order? So now we see that, okay, this one is almost done. Nice. This one is like about 1/5, 1/4 maybe.
Okay.
And this is then an example of a renderer that doesn't show the data as text, but instead like uses some custom HTML to do its stuff.
Okay.
And what this does is it just gets a number between 0 and 1. If your data is in a different range, you might need to add a converter. You'll actually see a different converter in action here. So for this, like this custom, is this an order that should be customized because the customer wants to pay for customization? Now we just have like true and false. It's just booleans coming straight from the database. We want to do something nicer to it. So what I do here is that I have this custom converter which changes the data to be, instead of a boolean true false text, it changes it to be a font icon HTML snippet. So how this is implemented is here, convert to presentation. If it's true, then we use from the Vaadin font icon support the check square O font or icon, and then if it's false, we use the square O without a check, and then just get like HTML for that. So if we save and reload this one, what we see now is that we actually see the HTML. Yeah. Which might not be what you wanted.
Probably not.
This is of course to avoid accidentally getting HTML in your data, because it can really have like security implications and make things ugly if not wanted. So we actually want to tell Grid that, okay, in this column it's okay to show, to interpret the HTML as HTML instead of as plain text. So what we do then is that for this same column, we set it to use an HTML renderer instead of the default text renderer.
Right.
So now when reloading, we have these icons showing the state instead of just printing out true or false, which was the default behavior.
Okay, yeah, I think true and false is something that only IT people actually understand.
Probably, yeah. One last thing with customization of how the data is represented. We can also change the like styles for specific cells or rows or columns or whatever. The way this is done is using a cell style generator. There's also a row style generator that works in the same way. So this is, again, it's a callback interface. Whenever a row is about to be sent to the client, Grid will check that should any cell in this row have custom styles.
Right. Okay.
So what we do here is that we see that if the cell in question is in the priority column, then we actually like give priority dash and then the actual value, like the priority. This priority is just an enum, so it's like high, normal, low.
Okay.
So then this will be actually two lowercase. So this will be like priority low, priority normal, or priority high.
Okay.
And then this comes, oh, that's not what I wanted. This comes as CSS style names, so you can then in your theme define it so that depending on the style name, different things are shown. Okay. So here I now have so that low priority is shown just as default. Normal has bold font, and high has bold font and red.
Right.
So in that way, that's one way of like customizing how the data is shown.
Okay, so this is basically the way when you want to hook up with CSS styling or SAS styling to the actual data as it is.
Yeah. One quite popular thing you can do here is that you can just have different styles or a custom style name that does like right alignment, for instance. So in this way you can just like, actually you don't need to say that, hey, this should be right aligned. You just say that, hey, this is the priority column, and then the one doing the theme for the application can see that, okay, this is the priority column. Now let's make the CSS that makes it right aligned. Okay. If the one doing the theme thinks that right alignment is a good thing for the priority column. Yeah. So in that way you also like get separation of concerns, which is usually a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good way to go.
So what do we have as the next feature?
Okay.
Let's add some more headers. So table only let you have like one header row which shows like the name of each column. There's quite many use cases where you want to have more headers or more footers. So what I have here is that first I like add a header row. I can either prepend or append it, putting it like first or last, or then I could also add it at any like specific index if I want to put one into the middle or something. But here I prepend it so it goes like on top of all the others. And then what I do, actually let's show it like this first. So here I like, okay, now we just have a completely empty header here, nothing in it. Let's put some stuff here. So one use case for having multiple headers is that you want to like show that these columns belong together. For instance, like if you have financial results and 1 quarter for each column, and then you have like on top of those 4 columns, or each 4 columns you have like the year, for instance. And then, okay, here I just like on top of these order and reserved, I show that, okay, both of these are quantities, and then that here's the like status of this order.
Right. Yeah, this was pretty loudly asked for.
Yes, it was.
For the Vaadin table component.
Yeah. Then we can also do the same for footers. Right now we don't have any footers here. We can add a footer, and then actually I will show 3 different things that we can put in there. The same also applies to headers.
Okay, so the API is identical for footer and header.
Yes.
Okay.
Only like footer row and header row different classes, because there's one difference. Headers always have one row as the default one, which is the one, for instance, where the sorting indicators will show up.
Okay.
But otherwise they are identical.
Okay.
So what I do here is that for the these order and reserved columns, I will add up the total amount, like sum of all these rows.
Okay, pretty typical use case.
Yeah, so here I just get the number from somewhere, and then I just set it as text. The other thing I can do is that I can set it as HTML. So here I can, for instance, add formatting to it. So here I will show this. Oh, let's not drag it. Here I will show this as like bolded text. Doesn't make sense here, but just for the example.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I can do in header and footer cells anywhere in Grid is that I can add, or you can add, Vaadin components. So here I will add a progress bar component to the header. So what this does, it just that it shows the ratio for like the totals.
Yeah. So I would say that finally
you
can put components.
Yeah.
There. And there we have it. That's awesome.
So now we have like basic text, HTML, and then this like any Vaadin component.
Yeah, awesome.
You actually said that there have been lots of requirements for components in these.
Yeah, surprisingly a lot.
Yeah.
Surprisingly a lot.
For what kind of stuff?
I think the people when they start customizing the overall look and feel of the data in a table, they are already familiar with Vaadin components and how they actually can style Vaadin components. Yeah. Of course, people want to reuse that way within a grid-like component as well.
Yeah.
So that's really, really typical.
Yeah, that's quite typical. Another quite typical thing that we see quite often is that you want to add filtering to your data grid.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, I think one of the most popular add-ons from the Vaadin directory was something filter table.
Filtering table is the name of it.
Filtering table was the name.
It's like top five in the download chart, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So what you could do then is that like you append a header row, because usually you want to have the filtering below the header text, and then for each column you add like one text field, or for instance for this priority it's just like 3 different values, so a drop down.
Right.
And then you just hook those up so that they modify the filtering of the container.
Yeah.
But this is something that you usually want to customize exact details quite much there, so we have chose to, instead of adding like direct filtering functionality, that would be probably quite limited because we can't take all use cases into account. We just let you put components in there and then you are free to do whatever you want with them.
Yeah. So if you do filtering, the best practice is, like you said, take the values from the text fields and just apply as a filters to the container itself.
Yeah. Actually, I think, no, there's not an add-on about it yet, but I talked with one guy who had made like quite generic way that you just say like, here's my data, and then it tries to figure out how to do everything.
Yeah.
So that one might actually show up in the directory quite soon.
I'm sure that there will be a lot of add-ons coming out for the grid component.
Yeah. But shall we continue maybe?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Next feature that we have, editing of data in grid. There's basically 2 different ways, because for instance this data here is really like something that you might want to edit, like change some status or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's 2 basic concepts. Either you want to have it so that when you select a row, session expired, let's ignore that. When you select a row, there's like a form, for instance, like below the grid or on the side or something, where you can edit everything and then press save. The other thing you might want to have is that it's actually like inside the grid, and that's actually what we have here. So now when I enabled editing, and then I also needed to disable column freezing because those are not yet fully compatible. It's something that we should fix, but we have not yet done that. So that's a small limitation. But now when I double click this row, I get here, so I can edit like as we go, and save it, and then it's like, then if your container is hooked up to a database, then it would also go to the database.
Okay, right.
There's still like the default behavior here is quite good. There's some nasty stuff. One is that these are read-only, but we still think that we might be able to edit them, so we might want to disable editing for those. This automatically gets a drop down, but here it's too small. That's not anything we can do anything about here, unfortunately. Just need to make the column wider, or then just disable editing of this one or something. Here in this we actually get like, this is a Vaadin component, a checkbox, and as caption it gets the property ID, which here is completely, in this case there's no use for it, and it also like overflows quite badly. So that one we could disable. And also this, once again we automatically get a date pop-up, and it actually uses the German language here as well.
So it seems,
but here it's now the default configuration is to just edit dates but not times. And that's something that Grid can't know what kind of date you have. You just see that it's a Java date.
Okay.
So those we need to customize.
Yeah, you need to do some fiddling, of course.
Yeah. So the first thing we do is that we set the column and the complete percentage as not editable at all. Then for the customized column, we get the column instance once again, and from that we can find the editor field that will be used. This is just a like normal Vaadin field component. It's created by a field factory. You can customize the field factory if you want, so that all fields for some specific condition are the same. Or then you can also put your own field instance there. But here we just get the like default instance and just set the caption to be empty.
Yeah, okay.
And then for the last one, the order time, here we do the opposite. We set the editor field to our own order time field component that we create.
Okay, yeah.
So putting all these together, refreshing. Now when editing, we have nothing here, nothing there, so that we know that we're not supposed to edit it. Then we have no text there in this drop down, and then now we have a slightly bigger date picker that also lets us select minutes and hours and so on.
Okay, right.
Right, so when we save this, everything works. One last thing or actually second last thing with the editor is that now, for instance, this field only accepts numbers. So what happens if I write some text here, press save, okay, I get a validation error.
That's nice.
That's good. I can customize these if I want, but what I wanted to show is that by default you can also like empty a field. So now we forgot whose order this was. Okay. That's not really good. So what we can do here is once again to use standard Vaadin field features. So we get the field for the customer. This is something you might want to do for multiple fields, but just showing it for one now. And then we set it as required, and then we also need to set a text to show if it's empty when you try to save it. So now actually if I clear this out and hit save, then it will say that customer column and value is required is the error.
Nice.
So that's about that. One last thing with editing. So all editing here is actually implemented using field group, which is the same thing that you use when making like form components for binding data to it.
Yeah, that started to actually look familiar to the field group.
So it's actually, you can actually get the field group instance and you might want to do some customization. One thing that is quite good to do is that you can add a like commit event listener to the field group to get noticed when the user actually saves something. Of course, the backend container also gets to know that here's new data, but you might also on the UI layer want to do something. Okay. So I'll show that next. This is a bit of boilerplate, unfortunately, but not too much. So we get the field group instance, we add a commit handler to it. This commit handler has two phases. One pre-commit, which is like after getting the values from the fields, but before putting them to the data source.
Okay.
And then the other post-commit is when data has been sent to the data source as well.
Okay.
So what we do here, just simple example, we just show a notification saying that changes have been saved. Okay. Cool. So now if you just change something and save, we get notification there on the middle of the screen saying that now something happened.
Yeah. So would it be some validation related stuff that would be placed for the pre-commit, or what's a typical use case for the pre-commit fallback?
A pre-commit is usually for doing more expensive validation because you can still use like standard Vaadin field feature to have validator on a separate field, but then if you because those are triggered like immediately when changing something, but then if you if you have some more expensive operation that you don't want to trigger just when user moves from one field to another, then you can save that until the save button is clicked.
Okay, good.
That's actually all the features we have right now. I will also show a couple of new features that we are working on.
This is also interesting, always good to see what you guys are actually working on at the moment. So this is good stuff.
So this is a really simple one. It has almost no API, but lots of user interface. So you can just set column reordering allowed. By default, it's false, but you can enable it if you want the users to be able to change the order of the columns.
Okay.
And then obviously what happens is that you can grab a column and then you can drag it to some other location.
Right.
And then this also, for instance, supports like dragging this one that is inside this quantity group, doesn't let you drag it outside of that group, but you can drag the entire group like this.
Nice.
And then you also get events to the server whenever the order changes, so you can do whatever you want to do if you want to do something.
Okay.
We are also working on column hiding, so that you would get a drop down where you can choose that, okay, now I want to hide this and this and this column, or then get them back to be shown again. That one is still slightly in progress, so I will not show that one, but I will actually also show a quite big one. This has once again required some really core changes to how Grid works.
Yeah, this is the big one actually.
Yeah,
it's a lot again.
We call it row details. So actually I will enable all the code.
Yeah, just show what you have.
Show what it does, and then we will see how it's implemented. So there everything is enabled. So now what I've done is that when you double click a row, you get expanded details about that row, and this is a Vaadin component in here, so you can put anything you want there. And these are like lazy loaded, only created for the rows that you actually expand it for. And if I double click it again to hide it, then we release all memory and everything. And also even if I open it, scroll it out of view, then it also gets cleaned away, and then when I scroll back here again, it's recreated. So we have really optimized this one. So the thing you can do here is, for instance, to show additional information that doesn't fit. You can also add buttons for editing something, activating, toggling, deleting, whatever. So here, just as an example, I haven't really hooked it up, but here we have a delete order button, and when I click it now, I just get a silly notification, but still you can then make this do whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we can have multiple of these open at the same time if you want, and all kind of stuff.
Yeah, so, but anyways, let's show some code a bit.
Yeah.
What it's going to look like.
This is a quite complex feature. It requires a bit of coding, but not too much. So actually here we have the details generator, which is the callback that creates component for a row. Or then it can return null to say that there's no details for this row.
Okay.
So it gets a row reference, and then from that you can, for instance, get the item ID. And here, since I'm using a bean item container, I know that the item ID is the same as the actual bean that I'm using. So here what I'm doing is that I'm creating this message that you saw, this one,
right.
This is a label, blah, 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 and add that as a label to a layout. And then to the layout, I also add this really basic button.
Okay.
And then just as said, hook this or bundle this together in a Vaadin layout component, configure the layout if I want to, and then just return that instance, and off it goes.
Yeah, that's plain Vaadin programming in a sense. Just return a layout and that will be there.
Yeah. The thing is that there are many different use cases for this. So we have not made it so that by default, the user can't open these details. You need to add some kind of listener for doing it. There are basically two different concepts, I think. One is the one that I implemented by hand, that when you double click a row, then it's expanded or collapsed.
Okay, that would be my question. I don't like to do double clicking on a website, so can I do it some other way? But here basically you have to declare
Yeah, you are in full control of how it's opened.
Okay.
So here I have added an item click listener to grid. This is a standard grid feature. And then what I do is just that if it's a double click,
right,
then I find the item ID that was clicked. Okay. And then I basically toggle the visibility status. And then also because the editor, that one actually by default or is hard-coded to use the double-click gesture on desktop devices. Okay, so I need to disable this one to not get conflicts. Okay, but also they use the same space, so it would be quite confusing to have both in use at the same time.
Yeah, true. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing I think many users will want to do is to add a column, for instance, leftmost column showing like, for instance, plus sign.
Yeah.
And then when you click that plus sign, then it changes to a minus sign and it expands. So then you have like kind of 3 functionality there.
Okay. All right. So you can actually do, you can do pretty much anything with this approach.
Yes, there's lots of things you can do with it.
Yeah. Awesome. People have been waiting for this, but it's coming.
Yes.
7.5. So
7.5.
When is it coming?
7.5, we are doing our very, very best to have it out in June.
All right.
So we're actually like now on the last sprint actually adding features. After that we will calm things down, get everything tested properly and make sure that all the like tutorials and that kind of stuff is in shape for release then in like 1.5 months.
Okay. Pretty close already, but there's a lot of good stuff for the grid as well.
Yeah.
All right. So, did you have some cool stuff for the 7.5 still?
That's all I have to show for now.
Awesome. I think that's good stuff coming for there. So that was pretty much the part that we had on the grid itself. So we got some questions coming in from the people who signed up. So if we go through the questions quickly, and see what are the major ones that people have been asking about here. So if I see here, there's actually quite a lot of questions that you already gave answers to.
Yeah.
For example, Taras is asking about components in headers, things like that. Yes, supported. Then we got a question from Basil about tooltips.
Tooltips, yes.
In grid. So anything you can share about that?
So tooltips is something that we have not yet added support for. We will do it eventually, but it's not really it's not the next one in the backlog either, but we know it's missing and we want to do something about it. Right now you can get almost there for like headers and footers. You can add, for instance, instead of just putting the text as text, you can put it as a label component and then add a tooltip to the label component, and then it will work that way.
Okay. So you can actually use the Vaadin tooltips.
Yeah.
You just play around with components.
Yeah, and then for the data, you can actually like add the HTML, because there's this HTML tooltip support. It doesn't look exactly as the Vaadin tooltip, but it's still really lightweight approach for getting tooltips for your data.
Okay. So that's pretty much the workaround for tooltips.
Yeah, for now.
The time being. Okay. All right. But now people are asking about it.
Yeah, I knew previously as well, but good to get it confirmed.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So and then actually there's quite a lot of questions. For example, from Marita concerning there's stuff missing from the grid component that table actually has.
Yeah.
So what's the best way to actually track the the progress of the grid? There's examples here, like the reorder, we already got that.
Yep.
Collapsing and resize of columns. Well, there's
collapsing is on the way. Resizing is also really. There's a small chance we will get it into 7.5. Otherwise, I'm quite certain we will get it into 7.6.
Yeah. So, but I guess we can expect to have little enhancements coming to grid with all bigger Vaadin releases throughout the whole year. For example, as you just saw the 7.5, what it actually has, there's new concepts again coming out. The row details, for example. So a lot of good stuff is coming all the time. So be patient. Be patient. Okay, so let's see if there's something else here. Yeah, I think there's actually quite a few good coverage in the talk already for the questions we got in. And of course, don't be offended if I miss one of your important questions. Please ask them, for example, the Vaadin forum at the webinar thread. That's a good place to get answers after this webinar as well. Okay, this is one thing that is obvious, the tree table.
Tree table, yes.
Yeah, so are we going to have a tree grid?
Eventually.
Eventually.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the plan on that at the moment? What are your thoughts?
Basically the same kind of functionality as tree table, although experience has shown that the way you get data from a database is not really compatible with the way tree table expects to get data. So I don't know exactly what we want to do, but something to make it more easy to hook up hierarchy data with a database.
Right.
And that's something it's among our top things to get done, but it's not really the most critical ones.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't even make any guesses, but we are aware of the need and eventually we will get it there, I think.
Okay. So is there something that you could actually expect from the community as a feedback or input for the actual tree grid type of features? What are the actual requirements for those use cases? Would it help, you think?
It might help, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, this is when we actually start working on making, for instance, tree table support for grid, then I think what would make most sense is at that point I should remember to create a thread in the forum asking for specific use cases.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good one. So remember to do that.
I will try.
You guys monitor the forum.
Yeah, remember to remind me.
Yeah. Okay, I'll remind you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, then we got questions from there's just initials MK. Well, Shahi is actually asking, do we have an add-on for exporting grid data to Vaadin spreadsheet? So I think this is it's an interesting use case, but I think this is pretty much out of our context, out of our league.
Yeah, I'm afraid there's lots of domain-specific things like how you actually want to convert between formulas and that kind of stuff. So I'm afraid that's something you would have to implement yourself. It shouldn't be that complicated, I hope, because both still have data in the basic same format, but you still probably want to do some customization.
Yeah. So you basically have Apache Poi is the way how spreadsheet uses data. So I don't know, maybe even Apache Poi container implementation would be a pretty cool one. Could be.
Could be, but there's not anything we have any immediate plans for.
Sorry, Shahi, you gotta do it yourself. And if you do that, so publish an add-on.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so then there's actually quite a few questions again about the variable row height or variable header height.
Yeah, okay, so those are kind of two different concepts. One is that each data row is the same height. That's a limitation or restriction in grid. It's actually there to keep things performant, because if different rows have different heights, then it's really complicated to calculate what's the pixel position of this row. So that's something that we are not 100% sure if we will add. We might add it at some point, but it's very open.
Okay.
Then the other thing that many people want to have is that data rows have one height, but then you want to show some big use bigger font or something in the header section. And that's something that's supported out of the box. You just need to give different CSS styles to those.
Okay.
And then grid will will compensate for that. So that's already supported.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, let's see what else. Okay, then there's a question from Venkata asking if it's possible to remove the checkbox on multi-select mode.
Remove the checkbox. Yes and no. You can do it with some really low-level hacking, basically defining your own client-side selection model, but that's quite advanced topic. This is something that we have received quite many requests for, so I suspect we will add it at some point, but not today.
Oh, okay. So no plans yet, but you guys are aware of this.
We are aware of that kind of requirement.
Okay.
Yes. Some people complained about table that, hey, I want to have checkboxes there, and now we get checkboxes there, and then some others want to get rid of them instead.
Okay, right. Okay, so we'll continue. Then we got, if I pronounce it right, the Saumia is asking about drag and drop and the grid component. So what's the status of drag and drop at the moment?
That's again the same story.
Yeah.
It's something we want to have there,
Right.
but
Okay.
not yet.
Okay, unfortunately not yet there. Then we got that already. Okay, then there's some legacy from the Vaadin table era, the action handler.
Action handler, yeah.
So basically
context menu,
menus,
yeah. Yeah. We want to have context menu in Grid. I have already seen a customization integrating the excellent context menu add-on from the directory into Grid. So that one you can quite easily get. There's just one small issue of not getting right-click events in the right way, but that's just a bug that we will fix.
Okay.
So using that you can get same functionality as from action handlers in Grid today, and then we would also want to add like official context menu support, but that's again soon-ish, but not really in the
probably it's
immediate
probably
future.
It's not going to be identical with the action handler approach.
Probably not. We might want to do it in a slightly different way this time.
Okay.
But still the same context. You get events when someone clicks something.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, just give me a second. I'll read that. And there's actually one question coming in just now. So Abhinav is asking, is there any property to drill down the report to another level? So kind of, I guess, basically drill down user experience when showing data in a grid, so you can click and then go deeper and show more. I think this is
it's kind of the same as the details row does, kind of the same that tree table-ish support would do.
Yeah.
That's at least the only things that come to mind for me right now.
Yeah. So I guess there's nothing built in out of the box for this drill in type of things, but you basically these tools that you just showed, that's the way how to mimic.
Probably, yeah.
Mimic the use case what you have there. Okay, then there's Venkata is asking, can I use hierarchy? This is almost impossible for me.
It's a tricky word.
Hierarchical containers in the Vaadin Grid. So can you use them?
You can use them, but you don't have any. You don't get anything for doing it because Grid will just use it as a like non-hierarchical container today.
Yeah. Okay,
so that's what the tree table-ish support that we're about to add later on will do. So that actually Grid would do something special if it gets a container with hierarchy.
Okay, let's see if there's something. There's quite a lot of good questions. Let's see if I can pick up something still here. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's actually Mario is asking about if it's possible to do kind of mimic the iPhone grid or menus somehow. You know, where there's, for example, the address book has the initial letter there, and then when you scroll, you basically, you know, that fades away and the next one comes in. You know, mimic these kind of things. Pretty, hard.
Yeah, that was actually something that we considered doing at some excuse me, considered doing at some point.
Yeah, Leif still has a little flu left, so
yeah, considered doing, but it once again turned out to be so complex, so many different things to take into account that we left it out. So I really don't have any good answer to that question.
Okay, all right. Okay, unfortunately, not built in as it is. So that has to be solved some other way.
Yeah.
Maybe an entirely custom component, even if that's the only thing needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think we are running out of time. We actually went over the time that we actually thought we were going to have for this one. So a lot of questions.
Lots of questions. Yeah.
So if your question wasn't answered during the session, please put it to the Vaadin forum thread for the webinar, and we'll try to be there and monitor all the questions. So that's the place to discuss this further, give feedback, give any hints or needs that you might have for the Vaadin Grid. Leif is the guy to persuade.
Yeah, let's do that.
Bit, yeah. So that's the way to get things to the grid component, I would say.
Yeah.
Otherwise than that, thank you, Leif.
Thank you.
Good stuff. This is something that all Vaadin programmers should know, and now we know that. Even I learned quite a lot of things here. That's always amazing. Surprise myself.
Yeah,
anyway,
I think I also learned something.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
We all learned. That's awesome. Anyways, thank you for watching, and we'll see you at the next webinar later. So now, happy coding with the Vaadin Grid.
Bye.
Bye-bye.